This is TWiT.
DuckDuckGo got in a stew pot of trouble when their chief executive, Gabriel Weinberg, tweeted Thursday the search engine would rank websites, quote, associated with disinformation lower in search results. Not knock them off the internet, but just lower in search results. It's later come out they maybe didn't have that much choice because they rely on Microsoft Bing for their search results. I did not know that, but now I do.
Huh.
And Bing said that they were going to follow the European Union's order to restrict access to RT and Sputnik. What I was surprised is I thought, well, yeah, of course they're going to do that. I'm sure Google's doing it too. But I was surprised at the firestorm that generated. A libertarian YouTube user, Tarl Warwick, with 500,000 followers, said, if you're using DuckDuckGo, I suggest you stop using it and switch to something else. Breitbart, the right-wing news organization, said DuckDuckGo is adopting the censorship policies of big tech. And in social media channels devoted to conspiracy theories, users vowed to switch to Yandex, the Russian search engine. This is why when you say, we got a governmental solution and so forth, we are so divided as a nation that people would get upset with a search engine for saying, yeah, we're not going to include propaganda from a warmongering country in their search results, would upset people in the U.S. It's appropriate, is it not? I mean, maybe not.
Have you been watching Tucker Carlson lately?
No.
I mean,
what's he say?
Mainstreaming Russian propaganda. Oh, he's very clever.
Yeah.
We were watching him the night of the invasion, and he was on the air 2 or 3 hours before the invasion, going on and on about, oh, did Putin call you a racist? Did Putin steal your job? Why should you hate Putin? And then the invasion happens, and I say to my wife, I said, tomorrow night he's going to have to backpedal somewhat. He can't possibly keep this going. And sure enough, the next night he comes on the television and he says, yeah, I don't like what Putin did. But by the way, it's all because NATO is at Putin's doorstep. And he basically said,
it's justified.
Putin's tactics,
we did it.
We should give him what he wants.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's going on and on. So,
look, it's his right.
Yeah, he has a right.
I think, though, that it's also appropriate for big tech companies like DuckDuckGo to say, we want to curtail the spread of Russian propaganda. I don't know.
Right.
Is that wrong? Should a search engine be completely agnostic?
I let other people speak. If you had asked me this 15 years ago, I probably would have said it was wrong because I was a free speech purist. And I think over time we have learned that just like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, just like you can't send out, pictures of sexually explicit pictures of children, there are certain limits to speech. And the old me never would have allowed the new me to get away with saying that. But I think history has proven that we have to have some, at least the private sector. Public sector, a different story. The First Amendment, as you know, applies to government.
Yeah, government cannot make a law abridging speech, but that's not what this is.
Private sector can do this.
And all search engines make decisions all the time, editorial decisions about what content they rank highly and not. It's not like they took it off the internet. They just lowered the ranking. I don't know. That doesn't offend me, and I was very surprised to hear how upset people were. And it made me actually think, maybe I do believe that search results should be completely agnostic. Evan, what do you think?
Well, I'm cautious in saying that there ought to be clear categories here for a search engine to deprioritize, especially when you hold the principles like what DuckDuckGo does, where it purports to be very neutral in this. I hear what you're saying, Leo. Search engines certainly, quote unquote, make decisions all the time about what content is there.
That's in the nature of a search engine.
Right. And I'm much more satisfied when that's done algorithmically based on certain things like, basic things that happen in the algorithm, like, well, how much is it linked to? What's its
the page rank and all that. Yeah, but at the same time, you might also deprecate sources. Google does it all the time. That's a spammy source, for instance.
Yeah. But there's a certain part of me that wants there to still remain with a certain sense of agency in the end user to be able to look at this content and evaluate its truth valence. For example, I'm a bit upset is way too strong of a word, but certainly disappointed to see that YouTube took RT offline. I was benefiting greatly learning about the contours of this dispute by watching RT.
Right.
I didn't believe most of what it was, but it helped me gain a robust, more deep understanding of the nature of the conflict. And now I'm not going to have
what the perspective in
Yes.
Russia is, what the Russian people are being told.
Yes.
And so you think that tech companies should trust. It's a little paternalistic to say, oh, we don't want to show you that information because we don't trust your ability to discriminate. So we're going to do it for you.
Yes. Yes. I'm eager to hear what Carolina has to say about this.
Well, no, I agree. I think is basically saying that user readers cannot make up their mind as to what is true and what isn't. Now, we do also know that there are users who are maybe less in tuned with how the internet works, or that might be, and I'm not talking about the war here, but in general, that might be, they might need to be, safeguarded from some information. But, you can't always make the decision for them, because I agree. Otherwise, you create a bubble, right? And I think that in the tech sector, we are sometime, and I talk about from my experience, think about how you use Twitter, where you follow people that tend to be people that you agree with, people that share your likes and dislike, that, might be similarly politically inclined or whatever the case might be. You do end up in a bubble, and you don't understand what others are listening or hearing, and how they make up their reasoning. And I think that, to your point, Leo, earlier about the state this country is in right now, is that we're not really listening to each other anymore. And so having both sides of the equation, I think, is important.
I certainly wouldn't want Silicon Valley to be able to say, oh, look, our worldview, our global view is the only global view. Yeah. This is what you should. And so that's the risk of letting a tech company decide with their own agenda what we should be able to see and not. You can still go to rt.com, Evan, and watch the stuff there.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, so it really was more. Yeah. So if I do that, I can see it. If I go to YouTube, it says, nah. But I think that's the point, I guess, is maybe YouTube was more paternalistic and didn't trust its audience. And maybe there's some case for that. It's funny because I'm sure YouTube would fight it if they were brought to, let's say, Congress to testify about their algorithm and its tendency to make people more extreme. They might say, oh, we don't have that kind of influence, but they still pull down RT.
And I would certainly be willing to stand up for YouTube and its prerogative is the word I'll use to do this. I don't want to say right, because I think that's a bit too fundamental, but and that's enshrined, for example, in Section 230, where these platforms can make these editorial judgments for content that is unlawful, lewd, lascivious, or otherwise objectionable is the categories that are there in the statute. So I don't think there's anything unlawful about what YouTube did, and I don't think any of us are suggesting that as well. This is a much deeper, even deeper than what policy questions go. This is philosophical. This is, whatever is at that layer. These are the kinds of perspectives I think we need to think about this from.
And I think it's important to try to get outside your bubble. I mean, I actually divide my television news viewing between Fox, MSNBC, and CNN because I want to hear the different perspectives. I want to hear what Tucker Carlson is saying. I want to hear what Fox. And by the way, Fox has some amazing journalists like Jennifer can't remember her last name, but she's
Yes, Jennifer Griffin.
Pentagon correspondent, is rock solid, and she'll argue with Carlson and Hannity. But my point is that it's important to get out that bubble, and I do want to see RT. I go to RT.com because I want to see that perspective. I go to Breitbart.com, and I think it's probably obvious by now that these organizations don't reflect my worldview, but it's important, I think, to have a broader sense of what's going on. And one of the things that bothers me about modern media, including social media, is how people are being pushed into bubbles. They're being pushed into these very narrow tribes. And I think that's detrimental to intellectual curiosity as well as democracy.